Hi everyone, this is Steve Hargadon. It's Friday, March 21st in the United States, and it's Saturday, March 22nd in Australia. And this is Classroom 2.0 Live. And our guest tonight is Al Upton, who is here to talk about student blogging and some events that have taken place this past week with regard to his student blogging project. Al, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Hi.
So it looks like we've got a pretty international crowd attending. You're at about 11:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah, 11:30 a.m. It's our Saturday of Easter, and happy Easter to everyone.
And for those in the United States, it's 6 p.m. on the West Coast and 9 p.m. on the East Coast. Al, why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about your background?
I'm a teacher, and I've been teaching for a good few years now. This year, well, actually, since I've come from up north, I'm a country boy. Since I've come to the city, to Adelaide, I've been teaching mainly year 3s and 4s, and I call them the mini legends. And that's what I do. I'm interested in learning technologies and how to integrate that into our curriculum. Not an added something, but just how we can use it to learn and have fun together.
So for those of us who aren't in your school system, the level 3 and 4 is 8 and 9-year-olds?
Yep, 8, 9. Currently, all of my students, I've got a straight year 3 class, and all of them are 8 years old.
So what is Mini Legends?
Mini Legends comes about because I used to teach older kids and year 6, 7, 11, 12-year-olds, and they were called legends, and then accidentally I called these younger ones legends, and then I realized, well, we can't do that, that'd be wrong, you know, the way things are, and so it was determined they'd be called mini legends. And as I've pointed out in other broadcasts, that they are very, very definite that it is a lowercase m and a capital L, one word.
So what do you do with your mini legends?
I teach them all learning areas that we have except for language, and I use a lot of technology to enhance their learning and to make it more meaningful, and that's quite probably what we'll get into here. Like, well, why using computers? Why just blogging? Why does it enhance their learning? Why is it meaningful to them? And how can we assure that it remains relevant and not too hidden?
So tell us a little bit about what kind of blogging the students have done.
Okay, to give you a timeline, I came to Adelaide in 2004, and that's when I had my first class blog. I'm only a class blogger. I've tried it. I've tried other professional development blogs and sharing, and I just don't have the hours for that. So I blog for the class, and since 2004, we've had people from other countries come in, and I've had this line for ages: leave a positive comment from time to time. Now what I've changed is that this year, for the first time, we've used the word mentors. So not only are the students publishing their work in a public forum, but invited mentors come in and they can... sorry, I'm just getting messages from everywhere. I have to close a couple of things, but invited mentors are coming in, and they leave a positive comment. What I do is team them up with certain students, ones I think where the learning will be at its best, or as best as I can judge, because a lot of this issue is about my professional judgment, and we take it from there.
So do the students actually create their own blog posts, or are they just commenting back on yours?
Yes, that's a good one. It's in 2004 again. We all had a single blog, and it was under my control, but quite frankly, it was not as under my control as it is now. So this is the progression that I've been taking, is that I know I'm a little bit on the outer, if you like. I'm pushing the boundaries a bit, but what I'm doing is opening it up as much as I can, giving it as much flexibility as I can, but what I'm also doing is moderating it to a much greater degree, and that's what I'm enjoying doing, and that's what seems to be working. It's all these phrases about authentic audience is very, very real, and it's important to the kids, like how they are seen and how they are perceived and who's listening to them.
So how have the kids responded? Have there been some light bulbs that have gone off for you in terms of their response?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's what they've done is all of a sudden they've gone from writing in books where they don't see all that great many. They try to please the teacher, and they hope that they've got something nice to show at the parent-teacher interviews and their books to take home to varying degrees. Some of the kids just don't care, and that's fair enough. It's why would they? But other kids go all out to produce their best work, and so you have a lot of students with varying entry levels. But the difference is then, as soon as you start using the internet, as soon as you've got something like a blog, we've got the classroom blog, and then they all have their own blogs. They all do have their own identity. They realise that there's somebody there, and not only do they know that there's somebody there, but there's somebody who's actually valuing them, and they are reading what they're saying, and then they are responding to that. And so this real conversation is taking place, and it's an absolute delight to see. Where you see some students would just not care at all about responding in any way to a lot of adult input, if you like. But but here they just go for it.
So how have the parents of the students reacted?
Oh, in the main, well, let's say from 2004, wonderfully. Huge support. It's been, they see the difference in their kids. Now, I unfortunately don't know all of my comments in the class blog, and there's that front page. I've locked down my blog, and it's just a front page, and there's been a huge amount of comments there. And but there's one in particular where it says about the parent wanting to, well, she's really pleased that her child wants to come to school. Well, I get that verbally a lot, and I have in the last 4 or 5 years. This is my 5th year in the city and in Adelaide. And it's like the students really look forward to coming to school. And they do in many other classes too, for different reasons.
But you definitely are attributing some of that excitement about being at school to this medium in which they have an authentic audience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They are. An example of that is like we're doing some sort of learning. We don't use technology for everything, but we're doing some sort of learning, and they'll say, "Oh, will this go on our blogs? Can we take photos of this? Can like it's my turn for the camera. Can I take photos of this and publish it on the blog?" And because they want to share it, comments like. Can or should this be something that I share with my mentor? They love the word mentor, by the way. And as 8-year-olds, they wouldn't have really come across it before, but it's something, for some reason, they have taken hold of and they're running with it.
So I just want to make a quick note because there are some questions in the chat right now. And what I thought we would do would be, I've got the chat set up now so that, or the microphone, so only 2 can speak at the same time. I'm going to ask Al a few more questions, and then we'll open up for questions at that time for the general audience. And what you can do to ask a question is to raise your hand. There's a little button on the left-hand side below the participants box. And when we get to the Q&A session, then just raise your hand, and we'll take people in order. So, Al, how have the administrators responded to the blogging?
I'd have to say fine and wonderfully, in that I'm actually with my class for 4 days in the week, and that's my main role. That's the one I cherish the most, is as a classroom teacher, but I also have a valuable role as an e-teacher where I create online learning, and so I am part of another team, if you like, called the Learning Technologies Group, and they've been wonderfully supportive. I use blogs for a lot of events, we call them, for people coming together and sharing learning. Now, they have said all along, I've recently got a phone call saying that they absolutely approve of what I'm doing. They can see that I've done nothing inappropriate, and that nothing inappropriate has happened to cause any of this kerfuffle.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the events of the past week. So you've been blogging with the kids. They've had an authentic audience. There's been a pretty positive response from everybody involved. What took place this last week?
This last week, things were going really very well. The stage we were up to is the students starting to get a good grasp on this interaction, this conversation with people outside of their classroom walls and their school and their city and their country. I quite deliberately was holding back, and I'm about to go in and with my input and let them go, although I'm moderating it. Everything comes to me, every email, everything goes through me, and I'm going to start to leave all my comments. And then what's happened is somehow or other the whole use of the internet and students' identification on the internet has been raised. We had a parent information night to try to allay some fears, understandable fears that people don't know what's going on with the internet and how it can relate to learning, and they hear things from all over the place. Well, fine, they're healthy fears, but somehow or other, what's happened is that there's been some individual or a group or some organisation, somehow or other, an investigation process has taken place or has been initiated, and it's got to the education department, and they quite rightly have, there's a need, there's a duty of care. It's their responsibility to say, well, this needs to be looked into a little bit more. It's on both issues. They would be taking this, my blog personally, and the broader issues of using the internet and how do we present students anywhere, not just using the internet. Now, so what I'm saying is that's all well and good. They've undertaken an investigation process. There was some attempt, I understand, to lock down my blog, to close it. That didn't that didn't happen. So I was asked through my principal, not directly, but I was asked through my principal to close it down, and I take that as wise counsel, and so I closed it down. The situation being, if I didn't, my students would be at greater risk, and so I really have to protect them, and I do really have to protect myself.
So there was some concern, an investigation had started. The phrase closure order, is that an appropriate phrase, or was it really just a request from your principal, or we just want you to kind of shut things down until we know what's taking place?
Absolutely. The order of closure would be layered in that there was, I understand, and it does get murky, but I do understand that there was some quite blunt attempts to close the blog down without me being consulted, and then I was asked to do it, and I did it in compliance. So that's actually on my blog. It's one of the top lines, if not the top line, that in compliance with my employer, I have closed it down. So there's been nothing formal in writing to close it down, but at the same time, there's been nothing formal in writing giving me a reason to close it down. So it's all been verbal up to this stage. I have seen a draft report of what might take place from now, but the process is underway and I don't want to go into that. I don't want to disclose anything in there.
Right. Well, I think you don't need to, if there are details that are not appropriate for you to share, then we don't want you to. At the same time, I think this is a nice springboard for what's obviously a larger issue, which is you're not the only one, yours is not the only school where they're asking the question, how comfortable are we with students being clickable or exposed in this way?
Absolutely. I understand that. I'm not the only one, and in that it has occurred to other people, and quite possibly in much more dramatic ways. This one has gained a certain amount of publicity, and but the other thing is that I'm not the only one in that I'm not the only one blogging. I'm not the only one who is taking photos of the kids and putting them up for public display, whether it be a school fence, whether it be a digital student newsletter or a school website, or whether it be taking the kids for a walk on an excursion. And that is the degree of the broader dialogue, is that I'm not the only one. And again, this has got facets to it, is that it would be totally unacceptable for something to be at the end of this, that I am given a formal order to do something, say with pictures or some sort of identification, student identification, and it doesn't apply to other blogs, other online learning, and it doesn't apply to other examples of students within their learning.
So, how visible have the students been? Have they been using their real names when they blog? Certainly, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I know that there is a great deal of comfort for students and adults alike to have. I really don't want to use the phrase "hide behind it," but this is what I'm thinking in my mind, so that's why I said it. But I think it's a great deal of comfort for students and adults to put up a pseudonym, to have an avatar or something, which our kids, my kids and us, we absolutely love. But we do have real images, like a thumbnail, a passport type photo that visitors can click on, and it will take them to the students' blogs. And then there are group pictures, as it would be on a school website. But even though there's no hard evidence for this, I again think it's, I'll use that phrase, it's just wise counsel to absolutely not use any surnames. We don't use those. Passwords and usernames are quite confidential. Passwords are quite confidential. No addresses. There's no need to write suburbs. Even our school's not zoned, so kids come from different suburbs. And other identification, such as, well, I walk home with my friend, and like where your house is, and that's at 4:30 or whatever. I mean, it's just erring on the side of caution, rather than, well, we do this because there is evidence that these students are at risk. And having said that, I do not recommend, and I will say this as many times as people ask me, but I do not recommend that people starting off blogging, or those who aren't ready to go beyond their comfort zone, those who aren't ready to take any amount of risk, I don't recommend that they open blogs right up unless they are prepared to fully moderate it. And I'm quite happy to help anyone to do that. What I consider fully moderating does take a certain amount of time, but once you've set it up, then it's really quite easy. Do Have you been made aware that anybody else has had to take the same action as you? Is there anybody else that's had student blogging that you're aware of who's gotten a verbal request to kind of wait until the investigation's done?
Yes, certain people have pointed it out, and what's come of this investigation is that people have been collating information, and Sue Waters' wiki would be a good place to go as far as getting that information and other blogs and posts. I'm not driving or collating information such as that. If you wanted to see Sue's wonderful support here, you would go to my blog, alupton.edublogs.org, and that's where you've got my opening explanation and then the following comments. But right at the top is a link to Sue's wiki, and in there you'll be able to find a lot more. But I don't know of anyone, certainly within Australia, who have actually been told to close down or asked to close down their blog based on nothing, based on no evidence, because that's basically the story. There was I've been given no evidence of why it was closed down, apart from something could happen, and now that might be that healthy fear we're talking about before. It might be an irrational fear, whatever it is, a concern of these people, again, if they're like individuals, group, organisation, I don't know. So I haven't heard of anyone who has been asked to close down their blog based on nothing, and then being told, well, nothing was found. And I still will not open them yet.
Have you talked to the students about this yet?
I certainly have. On the day on the Monday, this happened on Friday, so of last week, and so on the Monday I told them, some have been blogging, they like to blog on the weekend, and some managed to get in before I locked down their blogs, and others managed to, well, they went to go in, but they're all password protected, and there are no links into their blogs now, so they were aware, and the response was first silence, and then very healthy discussion that went for about an hour.
And have the parents responded to you in any way?
Oh yes, verbally, and in emails, and again in the comments. If people haven't seen those comments, I do encourage them to go and have a look, just because it, not that we're calling out for support, we're handling it in our own way, but you will see student responses, and you'll see some parent responses. I'm sure a number want to respond to it, but they might not be confident enough with the technology, and also they might not want to be identified themselves. People say to me, look, it wasn't me, on your side, we're so grateful for what you're doing, and if they're not taught at school while they're younger, if they're not educated about the internet, and that there is some risk, and this is how they can use it for their learning, when are they going to learn it? Parents have been pretty good. That's what I've communicated with.
Say that again?
Sorry, Steve. Look, I haven't communicated with all the parents on this issue. So but the ones that have come to me with support. And I really appreciate that.
So we've got a number of good questions that are coming up, and I want to turn it over to those who are interested in asking. But I want to ask one more question before we went there. In some ways, the conversation we're having now is reflective of kind of a changed world in which across international borders, in a very short period of time, there's an engaged discussion about an issue that affects everyone. So it's hard for me not to draw the conclusion that we want to help our students become a part of this larger engaged dialogue. And so are you seeing parallels between how quickly this became kind of a matter of international interest and your desire for the students to be participants in that broader community?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's phrases like what is too much student identifying information, for example, that has implications for anyone who is working with students online or offline. It's huge. It doesn't. It's not just our city, our state, our country. It's worldwide. I know that. I don't necessarily like being up front, like in the line, the spotlight, whatever about it. But I do know it's a global issue.
So let's go ahead and open up for some questions. Al, why don't you look at this? I put the screen up of the questions that people have been asking, and why don't you pick one or two there that why don't you pick one or two you'd like to respond to, and then we'll have people raise their hands, and we'll actually bring them on the mic so that they can ask questions of you specifically. So, are there one or two on that whiteboard that you would like to address right away?
Yes. Well, I can just quickly answer a couple, and then perhaps we can open up some for the for a broader discussion here. How do my kids respond to this mess? Is that please go and read their comments. Some have been really quite angry about it. Close to tears. I reckon I was the closest, but close to tears, and then reported back to me by their folks, their parents, that some just like the tears have flowed at home. So quite upset, distressed, and all those words that 8-year-olds aren't really expected or can't spell yet. They still say them and they understand them. They feel them in their heart. They're distressed, they're just disappointed, they're disgusted, they're angry, they're feeling this. Like me, this is not the sort of fame. We've had the famous mini legend sort of title for a bit, and it's like a little fun thing. And now they do realise that this is a broader amount of fame. The fame of mentors talking to people overseas was wonderful. The fame, this is inverted commas every time I say it, the fame of, there's everybody talking about it, but they can't blog. They can't get on with their learning. That does infuriate many of them. Has there been anything about this in your local papers? I've certainly been approached. I have said I've refused. I do know of one or two specific journalists who I would love them to be able to discuss this. But then what happens once it's out in the media there, all the other people will come in and you'll get rather warped and often sensationalist views where the stories that actually gain greater attention and more often than not based on on reality. They might be based on instances where the internet has been abused and used in horrific ways, but that is an absolute minority, and the broader use of the internet for learning is not there. One such journalist is talking about 2- and 3-year-olds who, this is in a positive way, 2- and 3-year-olds who are going on online, downloading Google images, sending emails, and there was an article recently in our local paper with a large picture of a child, full name, and also linking him to one of our ministers here in the education, in one of our ministers, governmental ministers. There was a third, so I don't really want to open to the media if it does happen. As some people have commented that it might be the best thing for the issue and it might be the best thing for the kids. No. I want to look after kids. There was a third question I wanted to open up. Steve, things bumped around. I've lost. Oh, here it is. Don't you think pseudonyms and avatars are better than first names and photographs? I think that possibly is a good one to open up. I will say again that if you don't feel comfortable showing yourself or creating a genuine online identity, don't do it. use avatars. They are fun. Pseudonyms can be fun as well. But please be aware that hiding behind, creating a false identity is an area that does lead to greater online stalking and grooming. For those not sure about grooming, is often the way it happens that there's some sort of chat, and then a minor or anyone is actually groomed over time until there's an actual face-to-face meeting where something could occur. I don't know if there's been any incidences of this for kids, preteens. Certainly I haven't heard of anything there, but of course it would, I don't get to read or hear of everything that happens in the world. Perhaps one way I would say it, let me think, there's a phrase, look, it does bug me that, yes, we have a duty of care, but just because our students are younger doesn't mean our best way of protecting them is to wall them in, hide them, protect them in that way. Try to think of my phrase. When we treat someone with kids' gloves, that doesn't mean that these are gloves for kids. Treating someone with kids' gloves is not necessarily a positive thing. It's they can range from smother love through to just being careful. Just being careful is perhaps what we need. I could work on that metaphor a lot more. Would you like to open it up, mate?
Sure, let's open it up. And there was a request for you to consider doing your video. And I don't know if you remember how to do that from our earlier discussion, but I think you click the transmit button. And then for those of you who are interested in participating, the way that Illuminate works, so far as I can tell, is that I will click off my audio, and I'm going to request that the person who is number one with their hand raised then click their audio on. If your hand's not raised and you're not the first one in line, please don't click your audio on, because you will be able to take over, but it won't be in the order that the hands are raised. So I'm going to click off, and Tim L., you're on.
Okay, I'm on. So who am I speaking to?
There we go. I'm Tim from Washington State. And the question I have is, did you get parent permission before you started the blog so that the authorities can't say that this has been something that's been done against the wishes of the parents? That's my question.
Yes, absolutely. I had a explanation page, and then I have at the bottom of it permission to use photos, to use video and audio, share collaborative learning, and in print, CD, DVD, and on educational websites, and I've even included there specifically this blog, and in there was an explanation about blogs. This was handed out. I had 100% of people sign this. There's always an option that if people don't want to go ahead with it, there are other ways to go about it and still include them in the learning that's taking place. So I have covered myself that way, but I must say that has come into question. It's like, well, how can we actually really tidy up these permission forms? If you were to go to Sue Waters' website, yes, you would be able to see more on permission and consent forms and how I moderate my students.
So I've increased the number of people who can speak to 3, which allows me to stay on. Stephen Fink, did you want to make a comment? And to do so, you click your microphone button down in the lower left to start speaking.
Yes, Steve?
I'm going to click my audio off in case it's blocking you, Stephen. Go ahead.
Okay, Steve, if you can't hear me, what's your specific question? I've got a lot in front of me.
Why don't we move on to Rob? Rob, can you click on your microphone button and are you able to speak?
Is Tim's microphone still active?
Wondering I was just wondering what you see the next steps being. I know you talked earlier about not wanting to reveal too much, but is there a process in your country for things like this or in your school district? And I'm curious how your principal is, what your principal or head of your school is saying about this.
I have good support from my principal. There is no real process because something like this hasn't really happened before. There is, of course, a standard investigation process in the way that there are standard grievance processes which are applied to us all. What's important, I think, to acknowledge is that part of this process is that some sort of precedent will be set if I am obliged to close down my blog and take all photos off and so on. Basically, that precedent has been set, and then anyone else blogging or working online could be told to do the same. I don't want it to be seen as a battle. I know there's some amazing people in the department who just wonderful minds who really look for solutions that are in the students and the teachers' best interests, who are trying to come to terms with how can we do this at a administrative, at a systemic level, and also at a level that suits the grassroots as well as those who might be trying to do that bit more within that grassroots level. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So let's try now with Stephen Fink again. Stephen, are you able to get the mic?
Thanks. I was wondering if there are teachers who blog in other countries. Can we do anything to help your situation and the situation of your students at this time?
Thank you very much for the offer. Okay, there's an echo there, but this won't last long. The best thing, I think, personally for the mini legends and for myself is short, leave comments of support, but keep them as positive as possible. Do not direct anything toward anyone. Certainly not my students, my parents, my site, my employer, the department. Just be supportive in that regard, and then to say, well, maybe there is a wider issues here. It goes beyond the internet. It goes into all other areas, and perhaps that can be explored in other formats. An example of this is there are a couple of conferences I know where people will be beamed in and talking about this in its large capacity.
So Al, am I hearing you say correctly that if we go to your blog site and leave positive comments, that would be helpful to you?
I go back and I read them, all right? And I do get overwhelmed. It does bring a lot of joy to my heart to know that there's support there. So that actually does nurture me. So I appreciate that.
And of course, we're delighted to nurture you.
Say that again, please.
I was going to say we are delighted to nurture you. Does it also have a positive impact on others?
Yeah, the kids. And like our high mini legends, we're behind you. You rock. Comment can lift them. Not even if they are thinking about, well, isn't this like a big deal? Because we're trying to make it as much as possible, but it's not. But it lifts them because, hey, people in the outside world are saying you rock. People in the outside world are saying we value you. people in the outside world are saying, we are listening to you. People in the outside world are saying, you have a voice. People in the outside world are saying, let's talk, because you are part of that world, and that's a huge message to them.
Looks like we have a question from R.D. Runner.
Hi. Yeah, I'm talking from Calgary, Alberta. And my question is, and I apologize if you've covered this already, but I'm wondering what the nature of the investigation is. Specifically, what questions or concerns are they trying to address?
Okay, if you were to go to, I could even bring up the blog. Shall I do that? Steve, you happy for me to share my desktop?
Well, it is, or I can just actually take everybody on a tour with that URL. So why don't I try that and see if that works for us?
Okay. Well, can I scroll down that, or do they scroll down that? Do individuals scroll that, or me?
Well, I'm going to do it for you since we don't know.
Okay. Well, that's all right. A couple of things at the top there is there's that link to click here is a link to Sue Waters' site, her wiki, and also at the top right where it says about that this is a multi-purpose blog that's for class use, educational dialogue, and that's what this page is now. That's why I went over here. It's a blog resource and development. It's an ongoing experiment, but I want to change that word because I don't like it. Okay, if you were to scroll down, and you see the value I place on the kids. What I am doing is updating it from time to time as comfortably as I feel at that moment. What I am saying is that I do have to be reasonably guarded because I am at risk. Having done nothing, I am still at risk if I was to open up my blog again or to do something. I am answering your question. Sorry, I don't remember your name, but I am answering your question. If you see the cluster map, that sort of looked like that before all of this happened, because there was a lot of global interaction, but now that is more recent, and this happened. In the interest of being transparent, I hope you can see that in blue. You'll see after that where it says...
Are you seeing the scrolling when I do it, Al?
Oh, I thought I did that. Across to the left of the cluster map is what people should be able to see.
I know I'm not seeing that. I guess I was wondering if there was something more specific than risk and management issues. Do we know specifically what questions they're going to be asking?
No, not as specific as I hope you are hearing. They are looking at, to my understanding, and again, things come to me from different channels, and I don't remember. I certainly don't know where all these things are coming from, although I am keeping a record of what's happening. Too much student identifying information is a big consideration. Is a big consideration. I will say that they haven't said, oh, we found too much student identifying information. But that's what the broader question is. And they have come back saying, well, we haven't found too much student identifying information, but that has been verbal. And until I get a proper draft, proper report, and only then can I really address anything more specific about what action is being asked of me, and the implications for others.
Okay, well, thank you very much, because I guess that's what I was wondering, is what kind of benchmark are they going to use to measure the too much against? So thanks very much, Al.
That's all right, my pleasure.
So it looks like M. Miller, you're next. And if you want to speak, M. Miller, you would speak by, oh, it's not letting you connect. We'll try again, clicking on the microphone button. And I'm going to take myself off to see if it allows you to connect.
Okay, are you there?
And Miller, it looks like you go on and off for a second, so maybe there's a connection issue. Do you want to type your question? So while we're waiting, Al, it does look like people can see the website, although they have to scroll down for themselves. Is there anything else that you wanted to show on the site that people could look at?
Well, had I been ready enough, I would be able to say, go to this comment or that comment. It's really quite funny because people often identify themselves with their comment number. I would like to go down to 200 because, and this certainly says it's not a usual post where you go through and you read it all. It's just where you can dip in and out, I suppose, unless you've got time. Yes, 200.
So we're going to comment number 200.
Yes, and there's a line in there. It's from Roland Daniel, and there's a line in there saying, "I do eagerly await how you're going to process this experience and how it will affect your use of blogging and the internet tools in the future." And I think that might help if I was to address that, and I know it has been asked in other ways. How I'm going to process this experience is often day by day and just mood by mood, if you like. Sometimes I just need to just get away from it as much as I can. I do know that I've got a family who are more important than anything in the world, and I do need to spend more time there. So I need to find a balance. This just on a personal level. How I'm going to process what's actually happening within the classroom with the students. I'll keep an eye on how they're going individually, and how that class identity, the mini legends, like that whole class identity is really very, very fascinating to watch. And it's also an integral part in the students' well-being, is they're belonging to that class identity. Sometimes it does get a little bit shaky, and sometimes, and this is only within a week, and sometimes there's you can see quite a solidarity. And I think this will be ongoing because of the second part of that sentence is how it will affect my use of blogging and the internet tools in the future. Until I get something in writing that I feel does not only apply to me, but applies generally, and we can't expect any sort of consistency that goes around the world. Really, at this state to state, we can't even expect that. But until I get something in writing, where I know I'm no longer at risk, and the students are not at risk, I won't be opening the blogs, and I won't be using internet tools. I think it's just too dangerous personally, and also I'm not going to. I refuse to use the blogs and the tools in a way that I find is going to wall in the kids and their learning, and it's not going to prepare them for the future, both their learning and their education of safety issues.
So Al, we did get M. Miller's question by text, and the question is, how are you being investigated, or is the blog just closed? Did you have to turn over the password and access to it, or did they just ask you to close it down?
I'm being investigated through the correct departmental procedures, which does involve that they will need some time, firstly, to have a look at the blogs and to sit with me. This has been done, and it wasn't an overly traumatic experience, but it did raise questions of, well, why is this happening just to me? Although you can have suspicions in your mind, you can never know for certainty who has initiated the investigation. I will repeat that it's not important. It has happened, and we look for the opportunity that it has given us. Did I have to turn over password and access to someone? No, I have not, and all passwords known by me alone now. And or is the blog just closed? No, hopefully that, I'm not sure what you mean there, but no, I still have full control over the moderation and over the locking of the blog. The blogs.
So a good question came up in the chat, which was, are you aware of any students who have started their own blogs because the Mini Legends is closed?
No, I'm not. But I am aware of conversations saying this is what students will do. And I am aware of conversations saying, well, this is what students will be doing very, very soon, is that they'll be going to other sites which might involve Penguins or Meebos or Facebooks or MSN, and you are probably in a better position to know the huge diversity of places that students can go and will go without moderation, without control, and unfortunately without a genuine, authentic online identity. And what I mean there, they'll be going there with these pseudonyms, they'll be going there with these often very cute and beautiful pictures, but it will not reflect reality, and that is the environment where other people who will abuse the internet will also go. And that they can pretend who they want to be then. They can say, yes, I'm 12, or I go to such and such a school, and you wouldn't really know because there's a pseudonym and there's a picture. I know that can be distorted, but what we're trying to create, and it will take time, is a more genuine reflection of internet use, of authentic conversation.
So I'd be curious, Al, if anybody who's on the call has been thinking about the same topic. And what I think I've heard you say is that actually asking students to use pseudonyms and avatars might in some ways put them at more risk by being used to covering up who they are when they're on the web. Is that, am I reflecting that accurately?
I can't say it with 100% knowledge that is the way to go or anything. It is part of my belief system that this is something that needs exploring. It needs a huge amount of exploring. We have to get into the online identity facet of communication, collaboration, and again using online technologies. At the same time, we have to be ready to protect ourselves and how we feel safe, how we feel comfortable. But please don't feel comfortable just because you hear other people are doing it. Feel comfortable because you have thought about it, because you have involved yourself in other dialogue with other educationists and other bloggers, whoever, who have really given thought to this. And I'm hoping that a couple of these conferences coming up will open up that online identity thing. There's no 100% safe way or correct way to go. It's just like the internet. There's no 100% danger or risk, but we do need to find out, well, what is the reality, and then we can perhaps get a balance. If kids are going to learn more and kids are going to share more, they're going to become better citizens, and it's going to have a positive effect on their well-being through using learning technologies and being able to talk to a diversity of people from a variety of cultures and the languages they have, then perhaps that might outweigh the inherent risks and the real risks that do exist within the internet. And we need to get to that and sort of say, well, where are we coming from? It's a mindset. So I hope I'm getting across to you. This is my mindset. I'm not recommending people to go out there and do it, but I am sort of pleading with you, please look into this. Please look into this and don't set up things that are going to create precedents. Like, for example, you could do something with your blog class one year, and it's all cartoon avatars, and there's so many, just Google it, you'll find heaps, and all pseudonyms, and then the next year you actually come to some sort of realization, or you feel more comfortable, and you actually really want to make this as authentic as possible. And then you've got parents who are still unsure, they're new to your class, and you've got administrators, you've got leaders, whoever, who aren't sure, and they'll say, well, you did it last year, why can't you keep doing it? And we need to perhaps find some path there.
So there's a question my eye keeps going to on the whiteboard, and the question is, how is your health, Al? And I keep thinking of the canary in the coal mine. You're sort of the canary here, and I certainly think we're going to see more and more of this issue. But that first canary sure doesn't have an easy time, does he?
It doesn't have a lot of time, did you say?
It doesn't have an easy time.
Oh no, look, it hasn't been, and it's not easy on my loved ones either, I suppose. I know, and but yeah, well, fair enough. That sort of thing happens, and sometimes you get pushed forward when you just want to keep exploring the boundaries. I really want to go to one of the comments. It's one of the later ones. Arthur Clarke died this week, a science fiction writer, and it's that comment. I will find it to address that, and while I'm looking for it, I want to remind you about canaries. Look, I'm quite happy to be a canary, and I might even develop a new avatar based on that, because you can't stop me doing tweets on Twitter, can you?
I hadn't thought of that connection.
Okay, what I'm doing is I'm going through the comments.
And while you're looking, I'll just mention that we're just about out of time, that we'd like to wrap up in a couple of minutes. So if you have a final question for Al, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, we're going to let Al have the last word here. M. Miller, you're back. Although I can't hear you if you're saying anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, my question is about your parent. My question is about your parent information night and how specific or vague you are, because I picture a parent information night as a hour-long informational meeting, but what do you include in such a brief meeting in order for them to understand the magnitude and the significance of being able to blog?
Okay, my recommendation, what I had planned for this year, is to start an information night as early as possible for a number of reasons. That didn't happen this year. Too big an echo, sorry. I've tried to create an awareness of what blogging is. The information night we had was really to also address, well, what is going on. There was already some concern about, well, is the internet a dangerous place, as I've been told and I've heard, and well, what wonderful questions, so I'm happy to address that, and that's the direction that the conversation mainly went. And just to point out, I had two of our principals there that night, which just shows the support I've got. It is my plan, and I've just went through good practice, and it's been part of this process, is to have a number of information nights so that we can actually get to the point where parents are learning more about the blogging process. A number are wanting to go on and have left comments on the blogs, and they're learning more. One parent has left a comment saying that she can no longer learn from her student if I'm not using these tools, and so she's really keen to learn about that. And so you can't cover it all in one session, but what you can do is cover the as best as you can the concerns of the parents. and caregivers, and I think that's where you have to come from. I did find that comment if you're interested and if you need to close the session, Steve.
No, we don't, but I want to be sensitive to your time. So why don't you wrap this up, and then after that I'll say just a few words of thanks.
Okay, mate, thank you for that. The comment I'm referring to, and there are just so many in there, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And I do hope that perhaps people can dip in and out of that and say, well, here's a, you used the word before, and I use it with my students, here's a springboard to a thought. Here's, this is something that triggers my own thinking process, and might feed greater dialogue somewhere else. The comments are 193. I don't even know where we're up to now, probably more than, see, I haven't refreshed my page, but it's over 200, which is mind-blowing. The comments 193 is by Ian McLean, and he does talk about the unfortunate death of Arthur C. Clarke, and I was aware to a minor degree about Clarke's laws of prediction, and he does have a famous one, and Ian's actually referred to the second one, which I think I've only read once in my life before, and just how wonderful to point it out now. And it's the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. Now I think that's possibly in a sense what I've been doing, and possibly that's why there's been a bit of a reaction, and let's celebrate that. Let's embrace all the opportunities that have come of it, and it could also be possible that every year is different, every moment's different. I've been doing this is my 5th year, remember, and nothing like this has happened before. But I'm now doing it on a larger and a more controlled scale, so it could be that. We don't really know. I'm not keeping too many secrets from people, but I am being as guarded as I can. I am anticipating that there might be a chance that I might not be blogging and using internet tools for a while, but hey, I might be, and I welcome you all to come in, because unfortunately what the kids seem to love more than anything else are red dots from countries all over the world on their cluster map. And I was never ever going to have cluster maps, because I didn't think that's what it was about, but yeah, it is. It's that global connection, it's that global support, and I thank you all very much. Okay, bye.
So Al, let me express the thanks of the audience here for your taking time with us today. And we know that you have a lot of other things to do, but it's been a time that we've all appreciated. Thanks, Al. Thanks to Illuminate for allowing us to host in this way, and thanks everyone for attending. We'll go ahead and close at this point, and I did put Al's Twitter account up for those of you who are tweeting, so you can follow Al on Twitter. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye. You still there, Steve?